Hello, hello. I am so excited for this live stream event. Before we jump in and get started, uh, type in the comments. If you can hear me, type yes in the comments and also type in where you are joining from. All right. Now, I'm going to wait to see who can hear me and see me. But also want to go ahead and introduce our guest of honor. Shannon Griffin is a member of the Carefree Expat Incubator Program, and she did what she didn't necessarily think was possible. I'm not seeing any comments. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, type in the comments, yes, I can hear you. Yes, okay. Bonjour. I'm from Georgetown, Texas. Hi, Yolanda. Good to see you. All right, so we're good. We're good. I can jump into the introduction of Shannon. She is our guest of honor. She is a member of the Carefree Expat Incubator Program, and she found me in 2021. Now, this was before I really knew that what my program was going to be about. And she found me somehow on Google, but this was before my website was really the website that it is today that talks about what I do, helping single women make a move abroad confidently and sustainably. And she found me and she scheduled a session with me because she longed so much to make this move to Paris, France. And she wasn't really sure how she was going to do it. So she thought about it and, researched about it and was really feeling stuck. And so we had the conversation. She took a chance on me. She joined the beta program. And as a result, less than 18 months later, she made her move abroad to Paris, France with her children. And she's going to share with us today how she did it and what it's like to be living in her dream country and how the Carefree Expat Incubator Program helped her make that dream a reality. Now, I want to go ahead and bring Shannon on right now. And hi, Shannon. How are you?
Hi, Patricia. Good. I'm great. Thank you.
Good. So good to see you. And I want to thank you so very much for being the guinea pig, being the first person for me to do a case study with, because I think it's important. My story is my story, and people have heard it over and over and over again. Sure, Patricia could do it because she's Patricia, but to see somebody who has not, that they aren't aware of, go through a program and actually make that move abroad, I think is powerful. So that is really what we're going to do today. And I want to ask you really first off, tell me a little bit about what your life was like before the move. Right as you were reaching out to me, when you were searching online and finding me somehow, what was your life look like? What were you doing for work? All of that good stuff.
Okay, well, I'm actually going to go back a little further because I actually met you in Richmond, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
It was in the fall of 2017, so right before your move. And it was a friend of a friend of mine had invited her and said, bring anyone you like. And I remember you came a bit later. I think you were doing something with your first book. And I remember you kind of sweeping in, and there was a lot of talk around you because before you'd arrived, everyone was like, oh, Patricia's coming and she's moving to France. She's really doing it. And I remember thinking, I want to move to France. Who is this? How is this woman moving to France? And that's actually the idea started for me that year. It started a few months earlier that year, and then I met you, I think, very fortuitously that fall. And my first thought was, okay, well, if someone is doing this, I mean, this is a message. Like, here's this person right here in my city, showing up at this dinner. We don't even know each other. This means something. So the plan was hatching for me at that point, and things that I was doing in my life 3 years later when I found you again, were following that trajectory. So from that moment, I was making a lot of choices with the hope that it would lead me to being able to move to France. So personally, I was working in a language immersion school, which was actually how I got invited to this dinner in the first place. I had just started then. I mean, I think in fact it was before school had even started. So it was my first year that I had been employed at this school as a teacher of French. So suddenly I was thrown into this situation where I was having to speak and teach in French every day, which I hadn't done prior. And I was still doing that a few years later when I found you again. And I had kept that job in large part because the French piece was helping me to improve my French and move to France. But also because I have children and my children were in this school. And that was also a piece, was I was keeping them in this school so that their French was kind of maximized for what I hoped would be this eventual move. And then the way that I found you again, I did do a Google search. I had met you, and then I knew you had moved to France, but I don't think I had heard anything through any of our mutual contacts because they were distant from each other. I hadn't really heard anything since then. You weren't really in the forefront of my consciousness. And fast forward a few years, I was in graduate school as well. And one of my favorite pastimes in graduate school when I was procrastinating on writing a paper, usually, was to Google search, how can an American move to France and work legally? How can an American get themselves to France? And you popped up one day, and I didn't even see your picture. I saw your name and I thought, I think this is that woman that I met. And sure enough, you were. And so I thought, oh, for goodness sake, like she really did it. And now she's got this business coaching other women on how to do this. I need to call her. So I did.
Yeah. So it seems like the universe was in play in 2017
I
to
think
kind
so.
of get your thoughts thinking about making this move abroad. And then happening on me through Google because I had not
Yes.
optimized my name or anything at that point. So it was pure luck.
Yes.
But so it seemed like for 3 years, there was this idea that you wanted to move abroad. What things were you doing to make that happen?
Well, again, I can't really minimize. Um, I have 3 kids. So when this idea started taking form, um, I guess that's 5 years ago, they were 15, 13, and 9. Um, and so their dad also lives in Richmond. And so that was a factor that I knew meant it would be a longer time frame and not like, oh, I can decide to do this and next year I'll be there. So some of the things that I chose to do, I mentioned the language school, was keeping language kind of front and center as something that was in their lives. Over time, there were trips that I took to France with them. We had an exchange student from France at one point. We were involved with an exchange student from France that someone else was hosting. At a certain point, there was an opportunity, and I think these were all pieces. Well, they were very clearly pieces of the puzzle. They were things that just kept popping up. Like we ended up having a graduate student come live with us because she had come to work on the French Film Festival, which is pretty big in Richmond. Actually, it's one of the biggest French film festivals outside of France in the world. It's grown for like 25 years. So it really was pretty significant. And that was in the fall of 2018. Sorry, the fall of 2019, right before COVID, in 2020. And so my sister saw someone had posted somewhere that this woman had moved here to work on the French Film Festival and was in a really not great living situation and was looking for somewhere to live ASAP. And she was living really close to our house. I contacted her. She immediately she moved in like 3 days later and became like another child in my family, a connection that we have. And fast forward, she actually lives in Paris and we are in touch with her still. Like she's somebody, and she lived with us until COVID forced her to go back in March of 2020. So she lived with us for about 5 months. And even before we actually moved, both the visits that I came with my kids for longer periods, we met up with her. So as well as the exchange students we had. So there were these little pieces that along the way enabled me not only to be building a connection for myself, but also for my kids and for us as a family, like these shared experiences that were really instrumental, I think, in getting us here as a unit and helping with the transition, I would say.
Yeah. And so you had this longer time frame because
Mm-hmm.
you have children and you needed to really plan and make this a solid plan. You were doing things like visiting, making connections, learning, teaching French,
Yes.
really building some things that would help you to make your move abroad. And yet you reached out to me for help in making that transition. Can you help me? Can you help me understand why that was? Where were you stuck?
So even in hindsight, it's hard for me to say why I felt so stuck, but I did. That was definitely a reason I reached out to you, and I found two other people that do not the same thing, but who help people get visas to live in France.
Mhm.
Um, so I can speak to that as well, why I ended up choosing you. But well, this is why I ended up choosing you. I knew that I felt stuck not because I couldn't do the steps that were needed to acquire a visa, but because
Mhm.
I knew there was something blocking me from proceeding with the actual practical steps. In hindsight, I can say that. In the moment, I just had a sense that I didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
And on the one hand, I knew from the beginning it would be a longer kind of project, that it wouldn't be, oh, 2017, I have this idea, 2018, I will move there because of my kids. But I think 3 years out, it also, like any project that long in duration, you need some support. You need sort of a support system. And I think at that moment, I knew it had grown to a point where it was bigger than just a dream in my mind,
Mhm.
but I didn't have enough support around me um, to help me envision those next steps.
Mhm.
Um, and so you were exactly the right person to help me like make that leap and
Mhm.
start. You and then also the community that you've built around this really were the thing for me that helped me take it from a dream that I could make. It's like I could do all the preparatory steps, but I don't know if I could have crossed over the threshold and made them real
Yeah.
without your program.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the logistical piece, the big logistical piece of getting a visa is daunting. It can be scary, but there are steps that you need to take in order to gather the documentation, have your appointment. And for you, that wasn't the thing that hung you up. It was something, a deeper mental block or something that was stopping you from going forward, making more progress.
I think for anyone who moves abroad for any reason, there's a point, even if you're doing it through a company that's moving you and doing a lot of these logistical pieces for you, I think the moment when you stop and ask yourself, is this worth it? This is this is a lot of work. But in a situation like ours, and I imagine like many of your listeners, when you're doing it sort of independently on your own without any real pull from the other side in the form of a specific job that's placed you XYZ
Mhm.
place, um, the amount of pressure you feel to kind of justify your choice, even to
Mhm.
yourself, is overwhelming. And I think,
Mhm.
again, that's where the community and you as a guide plays such a critical role.
Yeah, yeah, you make a really good point that, if you're doing something on your own and maybe you're doing it in a vacuum and most people aren't thinking about moving abroad and think maybe you're even crazy for
Yeah.
for even considering it, that to do that on your own is challenging and hard. And I think that with that, you can have that question too of, well, is this really all worth it? Even if you don't have, that the job waiting for you. My question for you is why? Why did you want to move to France? Why did you want to move to Paris?
That's I love that one of the first exercises in the program with you is figuring out your why. And I felt really lucky that it just popped into my mind. From the beginning, I just had this sense, oh, I know I'm supposed to do this. But when you made us go through the steps to figure out a why, the why that came out for me was, this is my soul's calling. And as you reminded me often in the program, well, I mean, that's a pretty big why. Like, you don't really need any justification after that. Like, that's sort of your inner being is saying, this is where you're supposed to be. Go.
Mhm.
Um, so that was hugely helpful for me that you had that framed in that why way, and that it was something you would bring us back to when we were having doubts or struggling to make a choice around something and how to move forward. You would always remind us, yes, but what's your why? Oh, right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's pretty important.
Is that something that you use now, even that you've made your move to
I
Paris?
absolutely do. And I'm so happy to report that because I won't lie to listeners and pretend that it is not hard on the other side because it is. um, and I use that why, but I have to say I feel very lucky that I have not had one day here where I thought this was a mistake and
Mhm.
I don't want to be here.
Mhm.
I literally wake up every day and look outside every day and I just know it's not even I feel happy or I feel good being here. It's, oh, I just know I'm supposed to be here,
Yeah.
which is great. I mean, I don't know if everyone has that experience. I think even if you don't have that experience, it's still okay. It can still be okay. But I feel really lucky to have that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I'm glad that you point out that, it's not easy,
No,
to
it's not
to
easy.
transition, to, get settled in a new place, a new country. Um, you've just been there about 6 months, right?
August, so 5 months.
So 5 months. Okay, so this is really brand new and you're still kind of finding your way, finding your place. You said that the reason that you wanted to move to France, to Paris, was that your why was your soul's calling. Now, and viewers might not even understand that, and that's okay because it's your why. But now that you are in Paris, right? Been there 5 months, um, what would your soul say to you for taking this move?
Thank you. I think, yeah, I mean, I guess I often, I'm just gonna be very real. I often think, also because I have 3 children and they're girls, I've seen all the Disney films. I often think of that song from, Tangled, which is like a Rapunzel remake. And there's this song that basically it's, when will my life begin? And
Mm.
I just, in my life, I've had so many periods of my life where I've felt like that. Um, and and now being here, I feel like, oh, now it started. Like I don't, day
Ah,
to day, I don't ever feel like I'm waiting for my life to start. Now I feel like I'm living it, like I'm
oh,
in it.
wow. I just got chills. When will my life begin? You feel like now that you're living in Paris, France, that it has, and you don't have to wait anymore.
Hmm.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
powerful.
and I'll also add, this was very affirming for me. I actually, through a whole series of miraculous
Mhm.
events and coincidences, all of my kids came with me. My two older kids are in university, and one ended up doing a year abroad, what's become a year abroad study. And so she's in Paris with us. And my second daughter ended up doing her first semester of college in London. Um, and then, of course, at the break in December, she came back home here to Paris with us
Mhm.
and was here for about 3 weeks. And then yesterday, actually, I put her on a plane back to the United States by herself, and she will move into her university with family and friends, but without me.
Mhm.
And when I was putting her on the plane, and I've been going back and forth to France for 5 years now, and um, every time I left, there would always be this real like separation and pull, like, I don't want to leave, but my kids are there and my home is there. And
Mhm.
um, when I put her on that plane to leave, rather than feeling like I want to be leaving and being there with her, I felt like this is where I belong and this is home
Wow.
and she'll be back.
Ah.
Which was amazing.
Yes, because it really affirms that
Yeah.
it was your soul's calling for a reason, and you took the steps, sometimes hard steps, to make that happen. Now, one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, how, Patricia, how are you able to live in France? How are you able to get, a residence permit? And I know that you said that you had been working as a language teacher in Richmond, Virginia.
Hmm.
Well, what are you doing now in Paris, France?
Ironically, I am also a language teacher now of English. Um, but I did actually, in order to get my visa, so regardless of the country, you need to just see what are the possibilities for visas and um, do your research. But it's easy to do that. The information is out there, and Facebook is full of groups of expats in every place that can. Um, so it became apparent very quickly. Oh, um, I guess it's the Profession Libérale visa is the one in France that's basically the easiest to get if you're an American, as a visa that will allow you to work. So if you're an American and you don't have a company sponsoring you, you're not going to be able to work here without that visa, because you're not going to convince a company. Well, the easiest path is if you're basically willing to come and be self-employed. Um, but in order to do that, you've done that. It's not totally straightforward. You have to have a business plan. You have to have some kind of a plan of how you're going to earn money, but you also need to have it on paper as an actual business plan as a part of your um, file that you're going to submit to the French consulate to request the visa. And for me, I think that part felt easier because this piece where I'm trying to bring children with me, that could be its own podcast. Like that piece felt so emotionally complicated, and just all the pieces involved in trying to do that. Just school, even just a school for the one child, was as hard for me to figure out as the visa was, honestly. Um, so doing the parts of the visa didn't feel like the hardest part to me, but knowing which one to try to get in the beginning, that I think that's a step. And that's something like your program can also help you break down the steps. Like, find the visa requirements for the country and look up information about what's possible, etc. Once you've honed in on which one you need, then it's just a question of like studying for an exam. It's like, all right, well, how do I get an A in applying for this visa? And there's a lot of information about that too. You ask other people who've done it. Especially if you can find people who've done it for the country you want to be in, the visa type that you want to have. So I was so lucky that you literally did this exact visa the year before me. So you just told me, do this. But there's also information on Facebook groups is where I found the information, I think generally. Oh, no, that's not true. I also found websites of people who had moved here. You can find a lot of cautionary tales, like, translate all your documents before you get there because people will ask you for them, or include this, if you have a diploma, go ahead and get it certified through this organization online. It takes forever, but it costs very little money and it will help your file. Those kinds of things. You'll find that information. And the more of that you can amass, it's the find your village, right? It's like, don't try to reinvent the wheel. You out how the last person who got this visa did it, and then replicate their system.
Yeah. So for you, you said the visa part is, how do you get an A in attaining this visa, right? And that really was, once you knew the visa type, then that seemed to be simpler. And you even alluded to before that, you had considered working with other people to help you make this move, but there were more around the logistics of getting a visa, and yet you chose me. So can you help us understand how, what it was you were looking for when you signed up for the Carefree Expat Incubator Program?
I don't know if I knew what I was looking for, but I had a sense when I spoke to you about it, a really strong sense that this is your path, get on it. I can say in hindsight that what was so helpful for me is that I could figure out the logistics. And what I found really hard was, like, for example, I figured out, it needs to be this visa type. I'm going to need to run a business, or at least on paper, look like I'm going to run a business. That's maybe not the right way to say it, but I wasn't moving to France because I had a passion for running X business in France. Okay. But you need to present it on your visa application like that's what you're doing, because if you have to think about it from their perspective. So it's also, you can frame it like a job interview. What do you do when you go for a job interview? We're all going for job interviews because we need a job that pays us an income that we can use to pay for where we live and to feed our family, right? Like, that's why we all work for money. I mean, it's great if your job is your passion. It's great if it can be more than that, but most of us aren't independently wealthy. So I kind of put it in that category, like, okay, this is what needs to be done so that when I live there, I have the right to work because I need to feed my family. I do have a passion for living in France, but I didn't, when I started, have a clear idea that, I have a passion for doing this business and I need to be in France to do it. Mine started more from I need to live in France and be able to work. How can I do that? If you start from a place of knowing, I want to live in this place because I want to do X, Y, Z, and that is connected directly to this place, I think it can be even easier for you to figure out those steps. And I would say the reason you were so helpful is that your approach is just more holistic. So it was kind of like, it doesn't matter where your start point is, we can still get you to the end point. It doesn't matter that you don't know exactly right now what this business model is going to be. We can still talk through the steps. And more importantly, let's talk through the underlying stuff. Why haven't you written any of this down? Like, these would be the coaching calls, why haven't you written this down yet? Well, what's stopping you? Well, okay, what about if you just tackled this paragraph? Do you think you could do that this week? And those little pushing. And then I would hit up against it like, oh, I haven't written this down because actually I had a conversation with somebody last week who said, you can't start your own business in France. How are you going to do that? You don't even know what you want to do. Nobody is successful at a business who doesn't know what they're doing. Like, you're not going to be able to do it. And it created such a block for me that I couldn't move past it until you helped me uncover, oh, well, this conversation like triggered your fear that you're not going to be able to take care of your kids there. That's what this is about. This has nothing to do with writing this paragraph. You can write this paragraph in your sleep. Just go write the paragraph. So I think it also became more clear to me as I worked with you why I had chosen you and why it worked so well for me. But again, I want to reiterate that I think you offer, it's holistic. You're offering all the pieces. So if what someone needs is, where do I get this information about which visa? You can point them in the right direction. But if what they need is kind of a kick in the pants, like, what is stopping you from writing this paragraph? You know, you have all the logistic pieces. You're the one who told me do this, then this, then this, but you're not doing it. Why? How about you try doing one of those things? And that's what I really needed.
Yeah, and I like how you put it that that you recognized that there was something you needed to do, the task
Mhm.
at hand, and that in the coaching calls you got, okay, yeah, you got a clear understanding of what the plan was, but also what some of the blocks were, some of the reasons why it may have taken you a little while longer to actually do something that only took you 15 or 20 minutes to do in the end.
Yes, and I think what's also really important to understand about that for people who aren't in the process yet, um, and we talked a little about this earlier, I really think those are the things that keep people from doing something like this. It's not actually that the thing itself isn't possible. Of course it's possible. People do it all the time. You did it. Now I moved here with 3 kids. I have an ex-husband who lives in the city that I left, and I figured out how to make all those, and my older kids are over 18, but my younger child was 14 when we moved here. And I figured out how to make all those things happen. Most people would just stop at the start and say it's not possible to move out of the country when you're divorced and you share custody with someone with a minor. And it's like, well, in fact, I did a lot of research and it's pretty uncommon, but there are other people who've done it too. So I'm not the only one, even in that category. And I think we allow we allow ourselves to be stopped before we start, but we don't realize that it's not because we think it's because, oh, this thing's not possible. I'm just not going to go down that road. When the truth is, there's something limiting inside of you that's preventing you from pushing past that. Um, because otherwise, you wouldn't have the idea to do it. I mean, well, if you have the idea to do it, it's already something that you want, that you're interested in. And if you're not doing it, the thing that's stopping you isn't that it's not possible, because you can Google search right now and find 10 examples of somebody in almost your exact situation who did it. So so for me, I realized, but again, I think it's also because it was such a long game for me. I had 3 years to piece together all of the logistics, which it turns out is the easy part. The part
Well,
I couldn't quite get past without you was the stuff underneath that's really preventing you from just, like, I had a huge block. I don't know that I honestly don't know if I would have been able to do it without you and the coaching program, because the pieces where you're applying for all these things, there's so many things you have to do simultaneously, and some of it involves forking out a bit of money for something that you don't know the end yet. And like in France, it's probably not this way everywhere. You know, you have to have a place to live before you even apply for the visa. Or you have to have, like, there are these pieces where you have to, or I had to have a school for my daughter. I had to pay 600 euros for a school for my daughter before I even knew, like 6 months before I could even apply for my visa.
Mm.
And that's really scary. Like you get into this tricky place where you're like, I'm forking out real money now for something that might not be able to happen. And I live in a place, my regular community is people who are like, what the heck are you doing? So it became really important, the community you built and also your guidance around, okay, I hear that's, coming up for you. Well, is that when that person says that to you, is that how you want to feel? Is that what you want to be guiding your next decision? Or would you rather choose something else? And it's like, oh, right, I have that choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's this, there was this, there were these blocks that you didn't know. You didn't know what those blocks were. You just knew you
Right.
weren't making the progress that you wanted to make. And you had done quite a bit in the 3-year run up to before you signed up with the Carefree Expat
Hmm.
Incubator Program. Was there something, a catalyst or an incident that caused you to say, I need help, and I know it's not the logistical piece, the visa piece.
Hmm.
I got to sign up in the Carefree Expat Incubator Program,
Um,
or a series of events, maybe.
I would say COVID was a big piece, because not being able to come to France for more than a year and a half. I mean, people couldn't go anywhere, but um, I really started to feel like, okay, I need to either move forward with this or let it go. And also I feel like, no, I wasn't in touch with you when COVID started, but I guess your experience through COVID also really helped me. But that didn't actually, I learned that later because that was after I started working with you. So, but I know that COVID was a factor for me, like just that feeling, that feeling of impotence, I guess, which I think is probably shared globally by everyone with something in their life. COVID like halted something, and you felt like, I can't even leave my house now. How can I do XYZ thing? And so that was a part of feeling like I need bigger support than this. And I think just the sheer amount of time that had already passed um, made me feel like, okay, I don't want to wait another 5 years
Mhm.
to do this. So I want some help because I feel really stuck. I feel like, in a way, I think I felt like I'd done all the things I know how to do, and it doesn't seem to be getting me there. What am I missing?
So it was a couple of things. It was you'd wanted to make this move abroad for since at least 2017.
Yes.
Um,
Though I will say the very first place I ever visited when I left the country, I was 25, and I came with my roommate from DC to Paris, and I got off the plane and I thought, I want to live here,
mm,
which I imagine happens to lots of people when they come to Paris.
mhm.
But that was probably my first like love affair with Paris.
At 25, there was
Yeah,
something, you knew there was something there. And then by 2017, it was, yeah, I need to
yeah,
do this thing.
yeah. And then by 2021, it was like, okay, I've been working on this for 4 years. I and by that point, I knew that my ex was going to be on board with supporting some kind of cross-Atlantic,
Mhm.
we'll call it shared custody, well, visitation.
Mhm.
So I thought that's clearly the biggest piece in this whole equation, and it's not a problem. So how am I not getting myself there? Like, what's the next? So yeah, I felt like, and I think too at that point, because the first person I spoke to about the visa process, she was lovely and very helpful. I actually spoke to her in 2017. Um, she gave me a few of the pieces of the puzzle as well, just in like a free phone conversation.
Mhm.
Um, because it had already been 4 years, I also knew, oh, I've done all those things now because I know all that, so I don't need that person. Like she would have been the right person 4 years ago, but now I've done all the things that she pointed me toward. So now I need somebody who can, like, you know, kick me in the rear end to get me over the finish line because, I have all the administrative stuff
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. So I understand better about, the thing that kind of pushed you like, yeah, I need the Carefree Expat Incubator Program. I need Patricia's assistance with that. You keep talking about kick in the pants. One of the
Yeah.
one of the one of the one of the benefits of the Carefree Expat Incubator Program is the accountability piece. There are weekly coaching calls twice a week, and you get on a call, you get coached through what's holding you back, and you get the opportunity to say, oh, by next week I want to have accomplished this. And maybe it's, I want to get rid of paint cans that have been sitting at my door for a couple of weeks.
Do you remember the pink those
Right?
paint cans?
In this
Oh.
way, you're taking those small steps that are going to get you to that place you want to be. Or maybe it's language learning. I know a lot of the
Mhm.
women in the program are learning a new language, and having consistent practice and is how you're going to become fluent. So those are some of the things that people are where I kick them in the pants.
Well, and I should say, I mean, Patricia is so kind and so lovely, and it never feels like she's forcing you to do something you don't wanna do. But it's that best combination of, I'm listening to you and I'm hearing you say that this is hard for you. So I'm gonna challenge you to try to do that this week or some part of it. What do you think you could do that? I mean, it's just right there in your face and you're like, "Oh, okay." But it's so helpful because you think to yourself, "Okay, I am a person who is taking on a move to another country by myself. Surely I can get the paint cans out of my basement." It's that but that's the biggest and best thing about this program. It's bringing to light all those things that really, it's not about the paint cans because that is obviously an easy thing to do. It's about whatever is under that. And you're so great at helping people to bring that to light, but like in a very gentle way that isn't it's also not therapy. It's not like, "Oh, let's talk about your feelings about the paint cans." It's just, "Well, what do you think is keeping you from bringing up those paint cans?" And even if it's emotional, sometimes people cry or get a little,
Yeah.
emotional on the coaching calls, and it's like, and I think the paint cans for me was the feeling of, like, groundedness in my house and being able to take care of my kids. Like, in the end, every block for me was around, "Oh, this it's all based in something to do with, are my kids going to be okay? Am I going to be able to take care of my kids when I get there?" And so the paint cans had something to do with the basement, the grounding of the house. And but as soon as I could see that, I was like, oh, there's that thing again. Okay, well, I can take the paint cans out. This grounding thing, I can find another way to feel grounded. I don't need to leave all the paint cans in the basement. So
Yeah.
let's get them
Yeah.
out of there.
It is safety, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
security, right? And I think
Mm,
even if we don't have children, we do things to make sure that we have safety and security, and
mhm.
things that are taking us out of that, or may feel like they're taking us out of that, um, may cause us to procrastinate or avoid or not make the progress that we want. And so, yeah, the program is excellent in moving you through those blocks. Now,
Absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit about, you had this dream, you had a seed of a dream back at age 25, but in
Yes.
2017, you're like, yeah, I need to do this thing. And, in 2021, when you joined the program and you did the work through the worksheets in the classes of what's your why, you got to, oh, it's my soul's calling. So now you've made this leap. You've moved to Paris, France. You've started a business there, and you're making money, right? It's not that
I
you.
am,
It's
which
not
is
just on paper,
amazing.
right?
Yes.
Um, what can you share with us? what that's like. What does that feel like?
Oh,
yeah, what is that like?
it feels amazing. I mean, I don't there's this live stream podcast is not long enough for me to tell all the backstory, but suffice it to say, I had a health situation moderately serious in 2016, and I also knew that I was probably getting divorced, and then I did get separated at the end of 2016, and um, so and then subsequently divorced. And so that, and I mentioned my kids at that time were 15 and younger. So I had actually been a stay-at-home mom for like 14 years. And having to go back to work after that amount of time is really challenging for most people. And it also played a big, my health issue, and then that dovetailing in that way really played an instrumental role in me kind of jumping directly on board. Like when Paris popped up again in my life, I was like, oh, I'm going. And it really fueled that. But also, it played a really instrumental role as I went forward with the idea, because I had to go back to work. I had to reinvent myself and find a job that was going to lead to me being able to really be financially independent and be able to support myself and my kids. And I just kept looping back. I think, again, because of the both things, if it had just been the divorce, I think as a practical person, I would have had more of a tendency to say, okay, but what's the quickest path to financial security right now?
Mhm.
But because of the health thing, I just kept circling back to life is short. You don't know how many years you have. What do you want to do? And would not let go of that because
Mhm.
of it. And
Yeah.
that really helped me moving forward, because there were different moments where, it wasn't really the best financial choice to uproot my life and three kids and try to move to a foreign country and make it financially there. That's um
But
but
you
I kept
did,
coming back to, yes,
right?
but I kept coming back to, well, what do you want to do? And so it just kept fueling me. And the irony is, I think at some point in the program, I said, well, I guess I'm like a reluctant entrepreneur because that's what I have to do to move to France. And since I've gotten here and I've been working for myself, really working for myself, and all the things that come along with that, more and more I'm like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. I think I'm actually really happy to work for myself. I think I actually, it's sort of this week I've had this realization. I think what I want to do is be a language immersion consultant and help individuals train teachers and help schools start programs where they actually offer real language immersion.
Mhm.
And I don't think I ever would have made that leap if I had stayed in Richmond, even though I was working in a language immersion school. And I mean, anyone who knows me would hear this and be like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense for you. I mean, but I wouldn't have had to do it. So I probably just wouldn't have. And so I'm going to end up being so much happier in the job that I do
Mhm.
because of all this. So the irony is, because I kind of had this dual place that I was starting from that kept pushing me and propelling me forward, and I would never let go of either side. It's like, you have to be financially independent because you're going to live in a foreign country, and so you're going to need that piece. But you're not going to let go of, well, and or you're divorced now, you got to be financially independent wherever you are. But if you're not going to let go of this piece where you're going to keep moving forward until you're where you want to be doing what you want to be, because life is short, I would not have come to where I am now. And it keeps pushing me. It didn't stop when I arrived here. It's been within the process as I've gotten here, as I've found work, as I've thought about, well, is this the right work? As I've been offered, like just this month, been offered more work than I can do. And so finally I'm in a position to kind of say, well, what do you want to be doing? Because you can't do all of it even. You got to say no to some of it. So which things do you want to say no to? which
Well,
is great.
so what I hear you saying is that, moving to your dream country, your dream city has allowed you to feel like you've started to live, as you said, but
Yes.
that also it has opened up avenues for you for personal development, number one, but number
Yes,
two, your professional development. If you
absolutely.
hadn't taken this leap, you would not have seen this opportunity or that is taking you in the path that you really want to go. And I
Right.
think that is that was is so true for me too. If had I
Hmm.
not, taken the risk of moving to France and taking a couple of years off to kind of figure things out, I would not have been in a place to say, oh, it felt really good to make this move abroad. And, I have some coaching skills. Maybe I could help other women make this move abroad and do it so they don't feel like they're doing it all by themselves.
Hmm.
And so I think that is a big piece because I think a lot of times people say, oh, well, when I move abroad, I'll be happier, or when I move to my dream country. And what I'm hearing you say is, yeah, there's that. You feel like your soul is happy and you're growing and in ways you never imagined. You're seeing opportunities that you wouldn't have to be happier in what you do.
I mean, in so many ways, so many opportunities I would never have in the US. I mean, just um, opportunities to teach places. I got to go do chair debates for the French War College, and I met a three-star general who is the head of the French War College in person, shook his hand. I would never be invited to the War College in DC to teach. I never say never, but I was
Not
not really
likely.
in a
Yeah.
place or on a path to do that. Um, I've done that. So many opportunities. I'm about to start an opportunity where I'm working with someone who's doing a project through the US Embassy to bring together teens from disadvantaged neighborhoods in the US with teens from the suburbs, disadvantaged suburban neighborhoods of Paris in this joint program. Um,
Mm.
Also that, I mean, and there are things that I would have loved to do from the US side also, but I wouldn't have been in the circle to do it. And or well, what I should say is my entry point for being in the running for um, being chosen to do it here is that I'm an English speaker. I'm a native English speaker. So
Yeah.
like in all these situations, the common denominator is what they were missing was someone who had experience with this, that, or the other component of what they're doing and is a native English speaker, which in the
Mhm.
US is no help to me at all, me and everyone else, right? So I just couldn't have I couldn't have entirely imagined that before I was here, how much that was going to open up just doorways across sectors for me in a
Mhm.
way that wouldn't be possible in an English speaking country. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that you could globalize that and say it is so impossible to imagine before you're in it the doors that are going to be opened for
Yes.
you because you're outside of your own comfort zone, basically, but your own city, your own bubble, your own community. You're suddenly exposed to all these different things, and you just never know where the opportunities are going to rise up.
Yeah. You've taken the step or the leap, right? And now you have a different vantage point from which to see, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. So I think that it's a really interesting point that you make that people who are considering a move abroad but have this fear need to
Mhm.
kind of consider as well as a reason to actually take that leap. Now we're almost out of time. I've got a few more questions, and there's some questions in the chat that I want to address. What would you say that you are most grateful for or happy about with your experience in the Carefree Expat Incubator Program?
Oh gosh. Most grateful for the coaching calls because those also, I don't think I would have made it through the summer because we moved the end of August. I don't think I would have made it without those coaching calls. Without the community of women who simultaneously were so supportive, but also were going through it too at various stages.
You say you wouldn't have been able to make it through the summer. How so?
I don't know if I would have gotten on the plane. I mean, I feel like right up until that moment, you like pack the final thing and get into the vehicle that takes you to the airport. There's this feeling like it's not real and or it's still so impossible. I mean, it feels like jumping out of a plane in a way. And so I think without that community of people supporting me and also you to kind of push me out the plane, I might not have gone.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there are always so many reasons not to do something, and which I think is based in fear. But we're very well programmed as humans to listen to fear because we think it's going to save us from being eaten by a lion. But there's no lion here, and just having you as like a constant companion reminding me there's no lion, what's the worst that can happen? You move back. Okay.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Yeah. So having taken the leap, um, what suggestions or recommendations would you give to someone who is considering making a move abroad?
um hire Patricia. You will never be sorry. Because I
Thank
also
you.
feel like doing the program, it builds these skills that you can use for absolutely anything. And even if your trajectory was, in the end, I didn't want to move abroad. In the end, I wanted to be happier where I was, or fill in the blank. It will still help you get there. Um, what was the question? What would I suggest that people do?
What suggestions or recommendations do you have for somebody who's considering a move abroad?
Do it. Believe in yourself. I mean, there's all of the, all the information's out there. Support is out there. And I think too, like anything in your life, look for the positive and look for the people who are supporting you. If it's something that you're excited about, if it's something you want to do, then latch on to every person and everything that supports that. And people and things that don't support that, just let them fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
Not that you have to reject people, but just, smile and wave. Like,
Yeah.
anything else, like people who want to give you parenting advice, that
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, just anything that you've compared to any experience in the past where people want to tell you things that don't resonate with you. You just let that go. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And find that support group or their
Yes.
support network. If you are watching and considering making a move abroad and think that you would love the support of a like-minded community, definitely schedule some time to talk with me and see if the Carefree Expat Incubator is right for you. You can do that by going to thecouragecatalyst.com/future expat. It's in a link in the comments so that you can access that. We can have a conversation. You can start the application process. I want to address a couple of these questions that are in the chat here. And we've got Sharon Miller, who
Hi,
is
Sharon.
a member of the program as well. And she has made her move abroad too. She's in Portugal. So
Oh.
maybe there'll be another one of these. But she asks, how is your daily life different from life in the US, or is it?
It's again, I have 3 children and 2 of them live with me. So sometimes we've commented among ourselves, it's not different at all. And it's like, we live in Paris, but we could just be in Richmond, but in the best way. And I would say the ways that it's different. I mean, even the ways it's different, Richmond is not a big city and Paris is huge, and all 3 of us take the metro every day separately to wherever we're going. And the transition to that was really seamless. I'm not sure why. So even the things that are different feel really natural. We live in an apartment. We lived in a house in Richmond. We love our apartment. The apartment's great. I don't think any of us miss house life versus apartment life, except that we used to have a great front porch that we don't have now, but
So, and there was another question. Are you on the outskirts of Paris or central Paris?
I am in central Paris. I walk.
Ah.
I walk. I cannot even believe this apartment. It is literally a miracle. It's so big for a Paris apartment. I recently discovered, I think the rent is actually probably 600 euros a month less than it could be by the market. So that's the other thing. I think it should actually be a more expensive apartment.
And there's another question that's around apartments.
Yeah.
How did you find a place to live?
Well, that I have to be honest about. So I do have a French boyfriend, which was a part of this move, but in the end, a very interesting, not so central part. However, he found me this apartment, and I will say, I looked for apartments for months. So I could counsel someone in how to find an apartment. And I think every country is probably different, but in France, it is indispensable to have a French person. But there are ways to do that. And I actually discovered before he found this apartment, I had almost hired someone like a relocation kind of company, but that offers a lot of services. And one of them is apartment searching. And that would have been a good move as well, because they're French. And so having someone French to help you find an apartment is very helpful. And Paris is a really hard place to get an apartment.
Yeah. So it's a good question. Thanks, Pearl, for asking that. I want to go back to Sharon because she had a second part of her question, but we were talking about your apartment. And so I wanted to get that. Sharon asked, do you still find yourself needing or wanting someone to hold you accountable for things?
Yes.
And the beautiful part about the Carefree Expat Incubator Program is there's lifetime access. So,
yes,
you know what? I'm here.
Yes, I know. And I know, and my schedule has not allowed me to come to the weekly calls, which I really regret, because I'm even thinking about that going forward. Like, I need to find a way to schedule that into my life, because yes, you still need that accountability. There's still so many, even just administrative things you have to do on the other side that I'm still doing 6 months out. So I imagine they last for a while.
Yeah. Is there anything? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, and they're different. The things that you have to do, it's just like from the US side. It's like not everyone's an expat. Even if someone else is an expat, they're not necessarily from the US. Almost everyone I've come across here that's American is either works for a big company that did all this for them, or they married someone French. And if that's not your situation, you're like in your own tiny bubble where no one really understands the administrative stuff that you have to do. And it's really hard. It's hard to figure out, but like, this is why I should have come to calls for this. I had, everyone has, I guess, multiple like government meetings or appointments that they have to go to. And the second appointment I had, I got there an hour early and then mistook the time, because my prior appointment had been, say the prior one was at 1:30, and I thought this one was also at 1:30, but it was at 1:15. And I got there at 1:20 and they wouldn't let me in. But it was a whole debacle, as the French things usually are. And I ended up standing outside for like 20 minutes waiting, only to have him come out and say, no, you can't come in today, but here's your new appointment time. And just like a month later, I had to come back and do it all again, just because like that mistake. I mean, and I was beside myself and crying for like 2 days.
So this is unfortunate that your schedule didn't work out, because
right.
because we're here for you.
Because it's not, but I knew that even in the
Mhm,
moment. I was like, okay, I know that I'm not falling apart because of this one little thing. It's like
mhm,
all the things and how they build up and how it's, but that too, it's like not everyone understands that. Most people don't even have to do that. And again, people who are sponsored by a company, they don't have to go to those meetings.
mhm,
So you're in a cohort, like everyone in line with me at that appointment, no one spoke English and
mhm.
most of them didn't speak French. So it's really, you're just in a different situation than almost anybody that you know in France or that you're friends with. And so they can't help you.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
don't even know
So,
what you're
so
talking about.
yeah,
So,
so that accountability and the calls, and
yeah,
knowing, even just knowing that that you're not truly alone, right? You might have been
right.
alone in that line is a help.
Right, but being able to, and because that is common to everyone. I mean, I remember some of the stories from a woman who prior had moved to Germany,
Yeah.
and I think it was just one of the stories she told about the day she was in the visa office and got awarded her visa. And as another person who's an ex, you can really understand that. And you're like elated for her. You're like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah,
Like you won
yeah,
the lottery. And
yeah.
most people don't understand that. I mean, French people here that I talk to, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you got that stamped. And I'm like, I don't think you understand the
Yeah.
the real the importance here that should be placed on this event.
Yes,
Yeah, so
exactly. I
having
mean,
that
there's
community.
nothing like it until you go through it. And if you're in a group where people have done that, right? You there's just a camaraderie, a bond that I
Yes.
think will be lifelong. And I'm really so excited that the group is forming the way it is with such amazing women. We're really out of time, but before we go, is there anything that you would like to add?
Oh gosh.
There's no pressure, right? If you say no,
um
it's no.
anything else that I would want to add? I mean, I just um yeah, just don't give up. Like don't give up. It's such, it's like the beginning. It's, I guess that too. Like when you arrive, it's not the end of the journey, it's the beginning.
Yes.
And so for good and bad, like, but I think keeping that in the forefront of your mind can help you get through all the hurdles that are to come, but also to appreciate when you leap over one and really congratulate yourself for that. And also know and recognize how much it's building your confidence and you as a person and just your feeling of what's possible in your life. It's like, if I could do these things, you know, what's the limit? I can just
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. I love how you say it's just the beginning. It really is.
But in
Shannon,
a
I
good
want
way
to,
too.
what was that?
In a good way too. Like a good
Yes.
beginning. Like, oh, this is
Yes.
like the
Absolutely.
beginning. It's like the beginning of the book that you always wanted to read, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
you're writing it,
yeah.
right? Thank you so much, Shannon, for joining me today and helping people understand more about your journey, more about the Carefree Expat Incubator Program and how it's helped you. If you are considering a move abroad and need some help or support, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Be sure to schedule some time at thecouragecatalyst.com/future expat. And we can kind of unpack what you're going through and if the program is something that could help you get to where you want to be sooner and with more ease. I want to thank everybody for joining today live and on the replay. And please be sure to like this video, share it with friends or people you think might be interested in it, because the more people who hear this, get this message, the more people will be inspired to take that leap or take steps to get to that place where they're not waiting to live life. They are actually living life. All right. I want to thank you all once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you, Patricia.